You know, when we picture the crucifixion, the image that probably comes to mind is a single, solitary cross. But the actual accounts tell us Jesus wasn't alone up there. On either side of him were two other men, two criminals, facing the very same fate. And in their final moments, they each made a choice that has echoed through the ages.
So that's the real question, isn't it? You have two men stuck in the exact same horrible situation, literally at the edge of death, next to the very same person, and yet their destinies could not be more different. How is that possible? What was it that made all the difference?
All right, let's set the scene. We're at Calvary, also known as Golgotha. It's one of the most famous and depicted moments in all of human history. And naturally, our focus is almost always on that central cross. But the stories of the other two men, they're often just a footnote. But it's right there, in their interactions, that we see this incredibly powerful human drama unfold.
So let's just get the baseline straight. These weren't petty thieves. The language used suggests they were serious criminals, maybe even rebels, guys who committed crimes that earned the most brutal punishment the state could deliver. So to be clear, they had the same status as convicts, the same death sentence, they were in the same proximity to Jesus, and they were facing the same terrifying, imminent end. On the surface, everything about their situation was identical.
And this is really what makes their story so incredible. It's not about their criminal records or their backgrounds. It's all about the choice they each made in their final hours. With the same view, hearing the same taunts from the crowd, and facing the same end, they both looked at the man in the middle and chose completely different paths. Okay, let's start with the first man. Now, the Bible doesn't actually name him, but later traditions have called him Gestas, and his response from the cross was one of pure desperation mixed with a whole lot of scorn.
The way he says this is so key. This isn't a humble plea for help. The Gospel of Luke actually describes it as a taunt, a mocking challenge. He's essentially yelling, hey, if you're really the Christ, then prove it. Get us out of this mess right now.
Justus's entire world, his whole focus, was on his immediate physical pain. He just wanted it to stop. He wasn't looking for a savior for his soul. He was looking for a miracle worker to fix his earthly problem. To him, Jesus was just a last-ditch gamble, a final shot at a temporary escape.
Now let's turn our attention to the other man. Tradition calls him Dismas, and his response is, well, it's just astonishingly different. And what's wild is that he doesn't even talk to Jesus at first. Instead, he turns to the other criminal and rebukes him.
This is such a remarkable moment. While in his own agony, Dismas does three incredible things. First, he shows a fear of God, a sense of ultimate accountability. Second, he admits his own guilt, saying, hey, we deserve what we're getting. And third, he recognizes Jesus' innocence. He sees the truth that so many others were missing. And then he says this incredible plea. I mean, just pause and think about what's happening. He's looking at a man who is beaten, bleeding, and dying, a man who looks completely defeated, and somehow he sees a king. He sees a kingdom that exists beyond all this suffering, beyond this defeat, beyond death itself. That's not just a wish. That is a profound statement of faith.
This is the foundation of everything for him. His plea wasn't about escaping the cross. It was about what came after. He owned his sin, he saw Jesus for who he truly was, and he placed all his hope in a spiritual reality. He was asking for mercy in an eternal kingdom, not a rescue from a temporary execution.
So this really brings us to the core of it all. Two men, one moment, but two totally different requests that reveal two completely different ways of thinking.
Let's break down the contrast. Gestas demanded relief from his present pain. His focus was entirely on his earthly life. He wanted to be saved from the cross. Dismas, on the other hand, pleaded for mercy for his soul, his eyes fixed on an eternal kingdom. He sought to be saved through the cross. It's a powerful difference, right? Is the focus on changing our temporary circumstances or on our eternal destiny?
So how does Jesus respond to this incredible act of faith from a dying criminal? He doesn't ignore him. He doesn't bring up his past. Instead, he gives him one of the most direct and powerful promises in the entire Bible.
Just listen to the certainty in those words. Not maybe, not if you're lucky, but truly I say to you. It's a guarantee. And notice how immediate it is, today. Not in some distant future, but in a matter of hours. The promise was absolute, and it was right around the corner.
And what is this paradise that Jesus promises? Well, it's not just a nice garden. In this context, it means being in the very presence of God, a state of peace and communion that's the destination for the redeemed. It was the ultimate promise of spiritual salvation.
Now think about what this really means. Dismas had no time to do anything to earn this. He couldn't get baptized, he couldn't join a church, he couldn't perform a single good deed. His life was one of crime, and yet salvation was his, instantly. This story is maybe the most powerful example we have that it was his faith alone, his complete trust in Jesus at the very end, that was the only thing that mattered.
And so, we're left with this. The story of the two thieves isn't just about them. It's really a reflection of two fundamental ways of approaching life, suffering, and faith. One path is completely focused on fixing the immediate temporary problems of this world. The other path looks beyond the present pain toward an eternal hope. The cross presents both, and it forces us all to make a choice.